really makes sense. It would be a pity to not have the airport sitting around the table at some of the meetings to ensure that that connections between where Hamilton Airport might ultimately fit around Auckland in future, if airlines return back to their old norm, makes an awful lot of sense as the controversy in Auckland continues around a second runway or a second international airport. So it would be a pity not to have the airport sitting around the table there. And look, I think the work around continuing to sit with our international status in the background there and being proactive is also absolutely necessary, because we might find as the world returns to some form of normality with travel, there may well be opportunities for low-cost carriers who might want to zoom in ahead of the major airlines.
Wrong word nowadays.
Zoom in. And there might be opportunities if Hamilton's sitting there ready to respond for carriers who might want to provide regional to regional international flights. So look, I'm very supportive of the changes and will vote accordingly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Ryan. Look, first of all, I'm encouraged on the face of it that the airport company has embraced and taken the opportunity to update the document to reflect the importance of pursuing, where possible, international services. And I'm delighted to think that a lot of that thinking may have come about because of some of the pressure and discussions that this council has led, and I thank my colleagues for articulating that in quite a unified way. So I'm happy also, obviously, that with our letter of engagement highlighting the importance of the Hamilton to Auckland connection. I also want to put my weight behind the discussion that this could be the time to encourage our other shareholders to consider selling their shareholding to this city. I think if I look back, the structure of the airport was deliberate. It was deliberately framed to disempower Hamilton City Council. It was deliberately structured, and it's ironic that the current chair was in fact the chief executive of the city at the time when that came up for review, and it continued so that we were in this quandary where, as a 50% shareholder, we had very little influence in setting the direction. And this comfortable setup that the current shareholders have and the airport company has, in my opinion, needs to be shaken down. This is the time for us to start saying to the other shareholders, actually, we do have a proactive and aggressive strategy in mind. And if you don't have the capability of participating, maybe it is time to sell your shares. To Councillor Robb's point, I couldn't agree more. COVID has in fact shown that Hamilton was in a very strong and unique position to have responded to the concept of a trans-Tasman or a Pacific Island travel bubble, where Auckland has had to, in the most recent times, work out how they were going to manage segregating international passengers arriving from non-bubble countries, with, in theory, the potential for commencing or recommencing services to countries where we're going to create a bubble. Hamilton, with having no international flights, would have been a logical gateway to low-cost carriers trying to relaunch services across the Tasman. That opportunity is not lost. This new letter of engagement and letter of intent embraces that concept. But I'm simply saying we need to add some more firepower. So I'm certainly supporting the document. but I'm also sending a really clear message. Maybe this is now the time we look at taking a majority stake in the airport, setting the direction and achieving some meaningful goals.
Thanks. Are there any other speakers? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Just in closing, I acknowledge the previous two speakers and also the work you did in helping shape this. So thank you for that. Thank you, Sean. Okay, it's been moved. Any against? Carried unanimously. Yes, and Wilson, welcome. I believe we have two guests zooming in.
They're coming in on the. They're just coming in on the live stream to observe.
Okay. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
We're on item 8, page 41. Sorry, item 9, page 54. Sorry, take 3. Item 7, page 14. This is the real Jason Dawson.
It is. While the presentation's coming up for expediency, I will begin talking anyway. Look, thank you all for having me this morning. This is our annual report update to Hamilton City Council from the 1st of July 2019 through to the 30th of June this year. I will take the report as read. There was a lot of detail in there with regards to post-COVID impacts for Hamilton, but I have got to obviously, as I normally do, a few highlights in my presentation that we will touch on this morning, just to see us through.
Just remind colleagues that this is essentially we're receiving a report, but it's a good opportunity to get an update from Jason and ask any questions specific to it.
So while the slides are still coming up, we'll still start. So look, obviously inside your report, you'll see that we, the latest figures that we were able to provide you was at June, end of June this year. We were still the 5th largest international visitor expenditure for New Zealand, even though we have lost, as you know, our main international pipeline. 100 international visitors were still in our country during lockdown, and they remained, and they still travelled our country, and most of those people have now left New Zealand. Domestic visitors obviously are returning back to Hamilton particularly, which has been great, and spending more than what they would normally spend, which is really strong for us as a city and as a region, which has enabled us to still hold the 4th largest domestic visitor expenditure for the end of our financial year. And again, business events also started to return to our city as well, which was fantastic. So it's conferences and events, obviously at Claudelands, but with the alert level 2 restrictions, we obviously have more physical distancing, and we've postponed a number of events until hopefully October, November, when we can start to operate again fully as an events and conference sector. We have 8 performance indicators, which we have highlighted inside the report. Obviously, we weren't able to achieve all of those, so I'll just quickly pull out the ones that we weren't able to achieve. Visitor spend, we had an 11% decrease, understandably because of COVID, attracting 1.471 billion into the region though at the end of the year. Our favourability, so visitor awareness and perceptions, we were at 8 out of 10 for full recommendation. We're now at 7.5. A lot of that was just due, again, to during COVID, people actually were readjusting and looking at other regions as well to visit, rather than actually a decline in our overall perception. And our industry investment, we normally have to bring in around $500,000 from industry to match some of the local government investment that we attract. Unfortunately, we were only able to achieve 323,000 out of last financial year. Again, most of our businesses were unable to pay to play in many of our marketing activities, which were kind of on hold for 3 months. But apart from that, everything was still on track. Return on investment, this will be the last time we're reporting on return on investment. You'll remember Councillor Gary Mallett would always challenge us with regard to this figure, because it is quite a broad brush one with regards to every dollar of council funding given to us, how much we would return to the region based on visitor expenditure and accommodation. So that's been revised for the coming financial year's service level agreement. However, what we did provide this time was the comparison. So for every council dollar invested compared to other regions, how is Waikato doing? So for Auckland, obviously, ATEED, they receive around 24 million from their council to actually deliver tourism services. They were delivering $307 back into the region through to Bay of Plenty, Taupo and Rotorua. So the closest for us is probably Taupo, who invest 1.95 million as one council into the tourism agency. So they were returning $311. So again, you could say you've got really good bang for buck out of us with regards to the dollar compared to other regions. But also, if you also look at the amount of funding that the others do invest, you'll see why they're potentially their returns are quite lower. They're quite significant. They're funding injections from councils. Well, like Preso, we'll carry on. So again, just some of your graphs. As a city, again, you were only had a 7.4% decline in annual visitor expenditure. Again, not as bad as other districts. Matamata Piako for our region received the worst. They were at 20% decline, with Otahonga at around 19%. So again, for a city, you've bounced back quite quickly post-COVID. Because again, we saw more travel into the region from end of April through to May and June, as well as our corporate spend was up with regards to returning to the region to host many conferences as well. We didn't lose a lot of businesses. So what we have seen is all of our tourism businesses had a reduction of service. We have skeleton staff still running at most of our hotels and at our venues, but we've managed to retain and keep the doors open. Alert level 2 did mean, of course, that we did have to reduce service even less. So we have some of our tourism operators only operating on weekends at the moment. But look, the forward bookings for school holidays for September are looking really strong, and we've seen that through July school holidays. So we're hopeful that September will be another bumper month for us as a region as well, where we can return to 7-day-a-week operations. And that's for everyone: hospitality, accommodation, transport, and venues as well. Eyesight review obviously was undertaken during lockdown. We're still awaiting the government decision on what they want to do with eyesights. The proposal was that the government would look to fund 30 icon eyesights. For those of you may remember the Government Tourism Bureau days, we had funded visitor information centres by the government. They're looking to bring back that model. And then obviously the rest of the eyesights remain as council and community funded assets as well. Managed isolation facilities. Yeah, we're nearly there. 2 more slides to go. Managed isolation facilities, as you know, it has had an impact for us as a region. So far, it's going okay because we've managed to utilise our 3 hotels for returning New Zealanders for managed isolation. Our concern is coming into the bumper event summer season. We would like to see some of our hotels returned to the direct market again, which would be of great benefit. We do see that as a future challenge for us as a city, particularly to host major events and conferences going forward, and even hosting visitors here overnight during key events or the summer season that's coming. Next 2 slides. Jump to the next one. Look, again, we won't spend much time on that. The overview was obviously what we did during lockdown. That's all contained inside the report. We had a mitigate response initially, which was around making sure our operators had access to the wage subsidy. They could navigate their way through all this government funding that was being released, and also redeploying our workforce. So we've managed to redeploy many of our workforce into the kiwifruit industry, and then eventually the avocado industry for harvest, security, courier delivery, and also retraining. A lot of our bus and coach operators are being retrained through Ag Drive in Cambridge to drive tractors and farm machinery for the next 12 months until the tourism sectors stand up again here in Waikato. Next slide, please. Restart. Again, we've supported councils with regards to shovel-ready projects, so we are still awaiting with bated breath for the additional government funding that hopefully will come into the Waikato. The only tourism shovel-ready product that we managed to attract funding for at this stage is Otaronga Kiwi House. And we're still awaiting decision, as you know, on a number of our council-funded shovel-ready projects such as Waiwhakariki, Hamilton Zoo, Shared Entry Plaza, the extension and connection to Waikato Museum and Hamilton Gardens, and also the Waikato Regional Theatre Cultural Precinct development here as well. Next slide, please. Our restart plan has remained the same. So we focused on hyper-local, and the Mighty Local campaign is still going strong because a third of the market right now are local residents that are still shopping, eating, eventing, and visiting our region. We are in the regional and domestic phase still. So again, a huge amount of money has been going into domestic stimulation of demand to get people back into the region again. And international, we've still got a question mark at a 12 months plus. But we are hoping for Australia and the Pacific Islands air bridge sometime within the next 3 to 6 months at least. Next slide, please. And next slide, we'll keep moving. So again, Mighty Local was around stimulating demand from people at home during Alert Level 4. We're now back in Alert Level 2, but we're still getting people and locals to get out and about to eat, spend, shop, meet, visit, and explore their region. Next slide, please. And lastly, the government obviously have launched the Tourism Futures Task Force, which is around reimagining tourism, another great buzzword after pivot that we will be focusing on to try and think of the future of tourism. We've talked for many decades around a more sustainable tourism sector that actually provides net benefit to communities. So again, the Tourism Futures Task Force will lead that, and as a region, we will be focusing on a destination management plan to help engage that conversation with all of Waikato. Next slide, please. I think next two, yeah. So domestic visitor, as we know, is really strong for us. Already before COVID, 75% of our visitors into the city were from other parts of New Zealand. This is the reason why we are getting more Kiwis spending in New Zealand. They normally spend 9.3 billion to go somewhere else. Offshore, 30% is spent on air transport, but Kiwis travelling within their own country would spend around 18 billion. So look, we are competing right now with other consumer spend products. As you know, you can't for love or money get a brand new vehicle, particularly in the luxury car market right now. There's a order backlog of 6 months. New motorhomes, brand new caravans have an 8 to 12 month backlog. Tradesmen, again, people are spending on home renovations and upgrading and building decks and things that they've always wanted to do. So we are competing with general discretionary spend. But again, Kiwis are definitely spending more on tourism. They're acting like an international visitor. They're staying in our commercial accommodation. They're buying tours. They're going on trips with their families. And we definitely have a strong marketing strategy to bring more dollars into Hamilton particularly. Next slide, please. 2.65 million, as we know, people live within 3 hours drive, and Auckland has been our key market. So when we jump to the next slide, with the loss of Auckland, we did see an immediate effect, but we know we will get Auckland back. And these are a couple of graphs that were taken from the Tourism New Zealand research around lockdown. So the end of the first graph, you will see the spike of Queen's Birthday weekend back of visitors into Waikato. And then on the right-hand side was a comparison of regions during July school holidays. We were the second largest region for visitor numbers after Auckland during July school holidays. So we know that we can bring New Zealanders back, and they will spend more than what they have before. Next slide, please. The national strategy, just a quick overview. Obviously, it's called Do Something New. Tourism New Zealand have had to adapt their business model. The government have now directed them to focus on domestic tourism rather than just our international markets. The idea of Do Something New is to try and change Kiwis' behaviours around having a new type of holiday in their own country. Most Kiwis are self-explorers. They like to book direct. They love a bargain, and they think a holiday is going to their beach or a campground and shopping at a supermarket and cooking on a barbecue. So we're trying to change that mindset around doing helicopter tours, going to Waitomo Caves, coming to Hamilton Gardens, staying in our city and having a urban escape. And we've worked with Tourism New Zealand on the next stage of their campaign. So ski has been a big part of the national campaign at the moment to drive visitation to the regions. Urban escapes is next. So Hamilton is a key feature of that urban escape, where we want people to actually come here and have a city getaway and go to events, go to theatre, eat out, which is just as exciting as actually going to some of our natural environment as well. Next slide, please. Some of our stuff we're doing. So we opened what we called Open for Exploration campaign, which kicked off the last week of lockdown. It's not using our paid media or our paid photography. This is all through what we call users and visitor experience photos. So their photos, their videos, their content, we are now resharing just to show that You want to see Waikato through other people's eyes and see our region through different lenses rather than just through what people may have known us for. So really working hard on changing perceptions in the New Zealand domestic market. Next slide, please. We did welcome back to Waikato videos. These are our operators who did 15 to 20 seconds outside their premises or inside their premise to say, hey, we're ready for you. The kettle's on at Zeelong Tea. Good, George, we've got the vats cleaned. No more hand sanitizer. We've got beer and cider ready to go, just to show that we are open for business. It's landed really well in our domestic visitor market because it's people-based, saying we need you to come back to our region and experience what we have here. Next slide, please. And lastly, in our corporate events market, business and conferences, we have the Mighty Welcome campaign. So again, what we do see is Hamilton is quite blessed with world-class facilities. You've got great stadia, Seddon Park, and Claudelands Event Centre, but it's the people that actually our conference organisers appreciate the most and the way that we host our conferences and events here. So the Mighty Welcome campaign has been underway focusing on what we call the mighty people, the way we host conferences, the safety and security measures that people are putting in place to safely host your events. Next slide, please. And next. Look, I won't expect you to read all this. This is contained inside your report. This is just a quick summary of all the government funding that has gone into tourism. So 400 million was made available for tourism recovery. 286 million went into businesses through the Strategic Tourism Protection Program, and that's on top of wage subsidy. We had a $10 million domestic events fund, which many events in our city were able to access, and actually that is to keep them going. Hamilton Gardens Arts Festival was managed to attract funding for that, as well as Balloons Over Waikato and a few of our other events. We're now awaiting decision and criteria from the government on the $50 million regional events fund. And this is around growing our current hero events, as well as attracting or developing new events for regions. So again, we've had government funding announced, but no clarity or criteria. We hope to know more by this Friday, and we'll be updating and working with our councils, particularly to look at some of the future events. We're fortunate we have a major event strategy, which has identified events we want to grow or develop in our region or attract during our shoulder season. So we'll definitely use that as a foundation. And then we also attracted funding ourselves. 20 million was made available to regional tourism organisations, and I'll cover that on the next slide. So we had to apply as a tier 2 regional tourism organisation. The maximum we could apply for was 700,000. That amount is based on the local government investment that we receive and that we had to retain for this financial year. So thank you all for continuing your funding for this financial year. We had to prepare a 12-month Waikato investment plan for MB. The funding can only be used for destination management, industry capability building, and domestic marketing. Next slide, please. So this is our additional workload. We have 27 projects that we will be delivering for the government before June next year. So we're going to be activating the Waikato River. We've always talked about that in our Tourism Opportunities Plan and in your original river plan around activities, events, attractions and amenities along the entire Waikato River. Hamilton City is a key focus of that, along with places like Ngāruawāhia and Lake Karapiros. We're looking at some potential new activities, events that we could try and do feasibility studies on. Touring routes, we are reviewing the touring routes. That's a collab project with Ruapehu and Rotorua to actually develop more self-drive itineraries between our regions. Triptych data we're still working through right now. So this will be the first time we will have live real-time visitor flow data, which we can provide to councils to help identify travel patterns and where some of the visitor pressures may be with regards to car parking, toilets, and also entry levels for some of our attractions. Food tourism, we are working with Bay of Plenty, Ruapehu and Rotorua on, again, to develop and promote our food and beverage stories to drive visitation and expenditure into Hamilton. We'll be providing one-on-one regional tourism marketing advisory support for our smaller businesses, and we're also going to develop a regenerative tourism program with all of those regions up there now, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Ruapehu, Rotorua, and Tairāwhiti, Gisborne. And that's really around sustainability outcomes for businesses and tourism. And last slide, domestic marketing was also a big part of the funding boost from government. So we've used that for our baseline funding, and we'll be doing more business events marketing as well. We can use funding from government to promote events for the first time ever. So we're working again with councils, our venues and event promoters to look at which events we wish to stimulate demand for. We're working on a Central North Island domestic marketing campaign, which will launch very shortly and run through spring and summer with all our Central North Island buddies. We've got the national domestic marketing campaign with Tourism New Zealand we're now collabing with. We are going to be joint funding a campaign with Auckland around a Love Thy Neighbour, come and visit the Waikato region, as much as Waikato residents going to Auckland. We've got a cycling platform that we're going to be standing up again and refreshing. And we're also, for the first time as a region, going to consumer events, travel expos, AMP shows. We're going to the motorhome and caravan shows to promote domestic visitors to visit Hamilton and the Waikato as well. Hopefully, I think that's the end of my presentation. Oh, one more slide, sorry. So destination management plans, again, full details contained in the report. It's a government requirement now. It's mandatory. We must all, as regions, develop a destination management plan. Again, we've already developed a tourism opportunities plan, major event strategy and a visitor strategy. So we'll just be updating and merging it into this framework. What we do hope is by every region adopting a destination management plan, there may be future government funding to develop some of the projects identified, but we will wait and see at this stage until we find out more early next year. Next slide. I think that's it. Thank you all very much. I'm happy to take questions.
Take a deep breath. I've got Ron, Dave, and then Ewan.
Thanks, Jason, for, as always, a very, very detailed report at 100 miles an hour. I've got some questions, though. One is on the return on investment, and I don't propose to relitigate previous discussions on this. But in terms of your analysis, and I know the report's going, that particular part's going to disappear going forward, but the return on investment, does your analysis show that if we, the councils, were prepared to commit another $1 each to that the return on investment would continue to increase? Or would it start to, like the other councils that you've reported in the analysis, start to reduce?
No, so it would have to update the analysis. The last analysis was done 3 years ago on the visitor strategy, but it did show for an extra $1 invested, what we would see was a doubling of our visitor expenditure into the region, and that would include events as well. So
why are the other ones so low? Why is Rotorua, for example, so much lower than we got 1145, I think, and Rotorua's got $370.
Yeah, that's right. So for them, as you see, look, the different amounts, they obviously give their RTO significantly more money, but they are one district. So again, we are covering 7 districts, and even though they might seem to have a lot more tourism operators, we have just as many. So for us, look, it's really around, for them having a lower return is based on that literally a lot of the funding actually comes from council. So we'll have a lot of industry actually investing in us as well, which actually gives us a greater return too.
Okay. And what are you proposing to change it? You're going to put in a new stat there?
We are looking to just remove that from our performance stats, but we will be tracking it still at a district level. So the idea is, rather than just have a regional measure of return on investment, is we can actually show your council investment with regards to the benefit to your district or city. Okay.
So on the bed nights, do the bed nights include the MSD paid rooms and the quarantine rooms? And I'm asking that question because currently, 2 of our hotels are full, 2 city hotels now.
Correct.
Are full quarantine hotels. So
managed isolation.
That would be 100% bed nights, but not in the particular area that where we really want to stay.
Correct. So what you'll see is from the 1st of July, we now have an accommodation data program. So it's our new replacement of the measurement of bed nights. So look, the latest data does include our managed isolation facilities, because the hotels do provide occupancy rates with regards to their hotels to the program. So at this stage, yes, 2 of our city hotels are showing 100% occupancy.
And the same with the motels where MSD are paying?
Correct.
Okay, so will they, in future, they'll be removed from the bed night stats?
Once they transition out, yes. Because at the moment we've asked obviously that MSD try and release a lot of our motels. Look, we aren't the only city obviously experiencing this. They've said it's post-COVID, but again, what we want to see is by December, all our motels and also our hotels returned to trade and leisure.
Okay. And last question, Chair, the eyesight review. Is Hamilton one of the 30
Tier
eyesights
ones. They haven't.
that central government are reviewing?
They haven't announced who they are. All they've said is that they would pick which ones they want as their hero eyesights. So again, we would assume based on, they said it's based on numbers, that Hamilton would be, because it is it's one of our 2 best performing eyesights with regards to the comparison of other eyesights in the country and the region right now.
So it's one of the 30, but we don't know whether it'll get
They haven't
chosen.
announced, no, that's right.
Okay.
And the government still haven't announced funding for it, so I don't think the government probably will, but.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, I'll just go to you and always decide you if it makes sense. So,
Thanks, Jason.
You sure? You're giving me the growly bear look.
No, I was giving him the growly bear.
I'm so easily intimidated there. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation as always. My question is around getting a better understanding of your strategy concerning working with Te Huia. I think there's a unique opportunity come January where we're going to look at doing some potential charter services prior to the commencement of the scheduled services. And I just want to make sure that I hear it from you that Tourism Waikato is particularly keen to work with Te Huia in putting together some meaningful packages, and whether or not in one of your subsequent reports that you could come back to us with a bit of an indication of the plan and the strategy, and just your thoughts on that.
Yep. So look, we definitely want to develop some sort of what we call leisure getaway with Te Huia. I think it was obviously, so there was still only a leisure service available on the Saturday. Is that correct? Is that still the proposed timetable?
I think what potentially could be happening is we are going to sit down and work out a strategy of doing 4 or 5 maybe charters.
Great.
In January that would run 2 or 3 days consecutive, so you could have
Prior to the start of the schedule.
prior to this. Yeah, this is prior to during the summer break. That is totally focused on leisure in both directions.
Great.
So those in Auckland could come down and spend a couple of nights, and those in Hamilton could go up and spend a couple of nights. And we are talking about that, in fact, the train would go past Papakura, potentially into the Strand, so right into the heart of the city. And so we just thought, gosh, could we put together some exciting packages? And I just wanted to highlight that to you and encourage Tourism Waikato to look at that.
Look, absolutely. So look, we were working with, obviously you saw one of the campaigns we're working on was with ATEED, around a Love Thy Neighbour type campaign. We were going to wrap around Te Huia in November actually as our launch of that campaign, because it was around drive, potentially catching a train, and also other ways you can come into the Waikato. So look, we are meeting with ATEED in a couple of weeks again to revise it, because we now know of the delay, but I didn't know about the charter service. That's really good to know for January. It is a peak holiday season for us. So I think, look, we would definitely want to work with ATEED on that as well. We are working directly as well, engaging with Kiwi Rail, because obviously Northern Explorer, as well as another potential leisure route for us. We're trying to get more stops across the Waikato as well. So look, I'll just pick that up with Kiwi Rail as well. But look, great to hear there's a charter service, and we would definitely want to work on promoting it.
Yeah. Just to follow that point, thanks you and Jason. Again, like Rob says, excellent report. Love being here. Came in especially for your report.
Thank you.
I think one of the key partners to work with will be the Waikato Regional Council and ourselves. To be honest, ATEED has never been thrilled about sending Aucklanders down to the Waikato. We've certainly found that with the train, so I wouldn't rely on them very much. I'd start local. You know that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We will need to fill the train coming back too. So.
Yeah. but we might have to go wider than 18 to get Aucklanders involved. And sorry, but my questions, one of them related to Rob's point about the use of accommodation for the isolation and for MSD clients at the moment. Is it possible to, while that's happening, to have a separated set or subset of figures showing that, so you can see what the true visitor accommodation levels are as opposed to the occupancy levels, or as part of the occupancy levels? Because
Yes.
that, long term, is not that what you need to know.
No, that's right. It colours it at the moment. So look, for us, we have raised it. We're not the only region doing that. So we've raised it with government, because government collate the data at the moment. But we've asked for them to actually remove or filter at least those that are being used for emergency housing or for managed isolation facilities. At the moment, it's definitely colouring our first report that we received last week. So again, they are looking at that. But the government collect the data at the moment, so it's about trying to get them hopefully to remove or filter, or provide us with the option to filter, which would be great.
The other question is, I'm wondering, you had some looking ahead bits at the end there, whether you're going to start working after yesterday's announcement on a Matariki visitor program from 2022 onwards. And there are local providers of facilities, but they've been sort of relatively small scale to now. But
Yeah, that's right.
With a long weekend and 2 years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, definitely. So obviously we work actively with Matariki Ki Waikato, which is obviously the Matariki events, that programs we have. A lot of them are in Hamilton as well. And obviously we've got a lot of Matariki events, and like the Dish Challenge by Waikato Food Inc. has been operating here for many years. So again, we already have, which is fortunate, some hero events that we could start to promote as part of a new public holiday.
Yeah, great, thanks.
And then we'll go to Te Pora in Zoom.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to step over anybody in the Zoom room. Wasn't quite sure of this new flash technology that we're using here today. Jason, thanks for the really good report. It's always easy to read, and really appreciate being able to watch the trends. Just in terms of visitor awareness and perception in Proof Point 1 point, why do you think that is, and how can we harness that, given that for the next, I don't know how long, you tell me, we're going to rely on people moving around the country and exploring parts they've never been to before for their holidays, long weekends, etc. Exploring parts they've never been to before for their holidays, long weekends, etc. Visitor awareness becomes even more important to know what, So can you talk me through what is happening there, and what could be part of the solution? Some holidays coming up as well, and actually, Hamilton's a really nice place in Christmas New Year, because you get into everything. Sorry, is it Monday? It is. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a long time since I've done karaoke.
No, that's fine. So
sorry. So my question. There's a good reason why. But just a summary question was around the visitor awareness, given that we want to harness people coming here.
So our visitor awareness has grown for the city and as the region. Traditionally we were in the negatives. So to make 7.5 and 8 out of 10 is actually a huge success for the city and the region. What we do see is what will drive people's perceptions, change their perceptions and awareness levels, is when they visit us. So again, we are seeing more New Zealanders coming back. This was a measure that was undertaken back in June. What we do hope is in a year's time that the awareness levels and the perceptions of what we do have as a region will have significantly increased again, just based on the numbers of visitors coming back. So we know once people experience our region and our city, they talk favourably, and actually they become more ambassadors for us. And Kiwis love word of mouth recommendations. So again, we just see more the strategy around getting more New Zealanders here, getting more Aucklanders over the Bombays to experience the metropolitan offerings we have as a city compared to what they expect in Auckland, will actually raise people's perceptions and awarenesses. So that's a big part of our strategy, is to get more Kiwis here that have never been before.
Yeah, so another question related to that's great. In terms of people come to the Waikato for business, which is clearly shown in that graph, business is still successful, conventions, etc. But in terms of events that we would normally see coming up in the summer, is there any work being done on that? Because otherwise we're not going to have Hamilton Gardens Art Festival or Christmas in Garden Place. Well, I don't even know whether the Christmas parade is subject to the same constraints.
I'll stand up to my name's Chair. Yes, there's a lot of work going on there. We are looking at.
Sorry, you might need the mic, Sean.
Over the January period, but the question still remains as to whether or not government will allow mass gatherings, and so we're still waiting for that information. But please be assured that both ourselves and others are dealing with show promoters, all of the major international sports codes, virtually on a daily basis to try and get things happening. And as I'll report when I talk about Age 3, effectively all of those people, they want to get the business back. They're pretty desperate to get back and running as well, particularly the sports codes. They are seriously need that business back. So there's a lot of energy. It's just a matter of what we're allowed to do. But when we're allowed to do it, it'll be moving pretty fast.
Great. Okay, we'll go to Zoom. We've got Mangai, Te Pora and Martin. Did I see your hand go up? Yeah, okay. Thanks, Mangai Te Pora.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora, Jace. Thank you for your always colourful presentations. I do look forward to them. Just a couple of questions. On page 23, we talked about non-commercial accommodation, and I note that you've talked about Airbnb. I also know that we've had a conversation, and I can't recall the outcome. I also know that we've had a conversation, and I can't recall the outcome of it, where we counted marae stays. But also, are we considering things like Book a Batch and every other accommodation online booking facility, counting those?
Yes, so at the moment, the only data that we can access right now is Airbnb data for non-commercial. But Stats New Zealand have been working for the last 2 years with Book a Batch, holiday homes, as well as booking.com to actually get access to their data. And so we are close as part of the new national measurement for accommodation to be able to receive that data. So we're able to see the providers. It'll be all of them wrapped up together: Airbnb, Book a Batch, holiday homes, and also marae stays, who actually do use a lot of those platforms to actually market their products. So we will soon be able to do a complete measurement of non-commercial.
Nice, nice. And the second question was around the collabs with particularly Rotorua. So Māori tourism unique, and what we have overseas visitors come through, go straight to Rotorua for that cultural experience, and I'm not too sure how we're faring around cultural experiences and whether people are stopping or that's gone up or down with Rotorua. But what's your thoughts around how we can use the time that we have at the moment to actually build up our cultural experience here in the Waikato, so we don't get bypassed and people stop here and stay with us here?
So there's two things that have happened around Māori tourism and cultural experiences. First up, for Rotorua particularly, New Zealanders rank probably at the bottom of the 20 things they want to do in New Zealand is experiencing Māori culture. So it's not a strong domestic product. It's really strong for internationals, which is why we saw many go to Rotorua for experiences. But from a domestic visitor perspective, most New Zealanders actually wouldn't go to a marae, experience a pōwhiri, or even have a hangi meal. So again, they have had to, what we call, adapt their business model in Rotorua around looking at different ways they can attract New Zealanders. What we do see though is what we call anyone who has lived in New Zealand less than 5 years are more likely to want to experience it. They want to know the stories of our land and our people. And so they are a significant market for us. And given we've got, hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders coming home and also new New Zealanders, we are using them as a target market. For Waikato particularly, look, it was identified back with Waikato Tainui around telling the stories of the kingitanga. And obviously telling the stories of the awa. So trying to get, for us, more activities on the Waikato River is a key part of that, and how we try and culturally tell those stories. So we work closely with traders that we have around the region get more authentic Māori stories told through visitor experience. So here in Hamilton, we have Te Ahure, so it's run by Les, who obviously does the Māori, what we call walking tours, where he starts at outside Waikato Museum and talks about the Makapara Kōwhai sculpture, takes people along the Waikato River to Kirikiri-Pā, and then talks about a lot of the sculptures that we do have around our city, ending with the Land Wars mural based at down on Alexander Street. So we do have some Māori tourism operators right now that have been adapting, but a lot of them have hibernated at the moment and are looking at different models post-COVID.
Cool. And then the last question was around, I don't know if it's a thing, but you kind of just talked about it there, was the corporate tourism as such. You got the corporate organisations having experiences or team building. What's your take on that within the Waikato?
So that's really
for us. Or
oh, right. Yes, yeah. So look, from a team building perspective, obviously, all being able to paddle in a waka would be quite a very spiritual and moving team building activity. We currently do not have that right now. We're not in a large scale. Most corporates would be looking for a size of 35 to 120. So again, it wouldn't have to all be in one waka, but they would have to be enough to do what we call post-conference programs, where people can actually undertake a team building or a conference activity, but it would have to be at a large scale. We could offer small offerings, that would be great, but I think it doesn't provide the benefit of keeping those tourism businesses open. But again, it's something we can work on, and happy to work on it if there was anyone interested in doing some large scale corporate team building.
Thank you. Go to Mark on Zoom and then you're on mute. Councillor Martin, you're on mute. And the Mayor's pinched your chair.
Oh, he's got mute again.
Sorry, I apologize. Connection's not too good.
You're right.
Okay, look, I just want to express absolute praise and gratitude for this report. Frankly, I see from some organisations reports that understandably a little glass half empty. This is the glass full, and this is full of, dare I say it, initiative and optimism, and we're being well served by your organisation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher.
With the do you agree, Martin?
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Maxine.
Excellent question, Councillor Martin. And thanks to Te Pora for asking the questions that I was concerned about with regard to the non-commercial. I note that the number of Airbnbs has dropped significantly. The number of properties that are available there. Also with our hotels, a couple of our hotels full with the isolation and situation. Do you think that that's really impacting on our ability to be able to host some of those larger kinds of events that we might want to gear up for? And how might we be able to use that private sector and enable, and what might Waikato tourism's enablers be around providing that support?
So look, the city is short at least of one or two large-scale commercial quality hotels of 4-star quality. Most conferences in the corporate market demand that all their guests or their attendees stay in the same hotels and that all rooms are of the same standard. So we do have obviously an issue even trying to host that ourselves. Look, we have had some little headroom, 40 new rooms at Novotel has helped. Obviously, it's suite standard. You know, the upgrade of which is just switched to a Ramada, so the old Days Hotel, ex-Sedema, old commercial hotel, has just been rebranded Ramada. So their refurbishments are pretty much 99% there. That takes them up to a 4-star standard as well, which is fantastic for the city. But look, we still need more large-scale hotel accommodation. I think Hamilton City has done very well with identifying areas for hotels, including Arts Post, Sonning Road Car Park and North Victoria. But look, potentially the hotel investment case definitely needs updating for Hamilton. We are still 9th with regards to inventory for hotels as a city compared to others. And I think, look, for anyone now is the time to obviously build as we prepare for the future, because it's not just events, it's also for visitors and tourism. We're seeing a strong desire for people to want to stay in full service hotels again. But look, I think council has done the best with what they can, but potentially post-COVID, it might be a time to dust off the hotel investment case, update the figures, and potentially look at some new opportunities as well.
And the Airbnb private offerings, how might you be able to enable that and grow that market as well? Is that something that's viable?
Look, the market demands is completely driven for non-commercial for Airbnb. I would say there's actually been some wins for us as a city and for places like Raglan. Raglan, 60% of their housing stock was Airbnb. We had a housing shortage for our long-term renters. There was displacement of our residents and our workers. Post-COVID, they're now in long-term rentals in those ex-Airbnb properties. So that's kind of the same for the city. Once international students are allowed to return, once we get more visitors back, I think it would also be good to convert many of our non-commercial actually into rental properties, which is a big gap right now for the city and for places like Raglan. So I do feel there might be a double-edged sword. So for now, grateful to actually get that stock back into our rental stock to keep our workers here.
And my last question is with regard to packages. Councillor Yuan mentioned the Te Huia train, but there are many other opportunities to be able to package up deals for people. Nothing better in the Kiwi pocket than getting a bit of a discount in a whole weekend experience.
Absolutely.
So there are a bunch of those available?
There are. So we already have a number of deals and packages that we work with our operators on. Those were available post-COVID. It's always been there, our hot deals, but we've obviously accelerated that and developed more. And when Vanessa comes, obviously we work with Hamilton Central Business Association and the Hamilton Eyesight. Your guys' Eyesight was actually the booking agent for our city getaway packages. So we're seeing it as those as continuing and growing more packages, particularly for the city, to try and get people to use this still as a base, which is what we do, but experience different parts of our region.
Thanks. Over to you, Councillor Seri, for a question.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Jason, for your presentation. Just Maxine's question, we answered to it, prompted me to think, what do you know in terms of Airbnb, what are our policy? Are rates different for, say if someone's renting out their place for Airbnb, for a large proportion of the time, are they paying commercial rates?
No, not. So they can be set. Look, council, your staff will be able to advise you on what sort of processes there are. What I would probably say is take a look at Christchurch. So Christchurch City Council are currently debating about non-commercial accommodation, having different rates or levies for non-commercial accommodation providers in their city. And also obviously Auckland did look at it, as well as Coromandel a few years ago. And what was that? I think Auckland has, and Dunedin, that's right. So look, there are different mechanisms and tools that are available, but your staff will be able to advise on what their proposal would be, what you would need to look at.
Okay, it's Jen, I can't see you, but I presume you're in the room somewhere. Would we be able to get some information just on what the current situation is for Airbnb and that situation around how they're treated for rates?
Yes, we can. In fact, I think Sean, you do a maybe you didn't.
Yeah. Key text on commercial accommodation overall.
Yeah, I can get you. information.
Yeah, and look, there is some guidance from Local Government New Zealand. Local Government New Zealand looked at this as part of the Productivity Commission review last year.
Thanks, Eric. Was that all? Awesome. Just a couple of questions for me, Jason. Thank you, Rob, for channeling Gary on that question. That helped me. In your report, Jason, you mentioned the boom and bust cycle and getting out of that. What is the strategy thinking behind that?
Domestic tourism. So again, we've always been strong in domestic. We want to make that our core year round, and activating our locals. So many Waikato residents think to have a holiday they need to go to Queenstown or Turuturu or Taupo. We want to actually reframe their behaviours around actually you can go to Raglan for the weekend, you can come to Hamilton for a city escape, you can go up to Mount Te Aroha, to the northern part of Waikato as well. So again, our two strategies are activating locals to stay within the region for safety as well, as much as spend, and then also to get more New Zealanders here. Rather than always reliant on international markets, because look, pandemics will come and go for the next 50 years, so we need to be prepared.
And just in regard to that $50 million regional events funding, remind me what we were aligning ourselves to try and attract out of that.
So all the government haven't released any criteria or funding applications around it. All they've said in their statement when they announced it was it's to grow some of your anchor events within your region and to attract or develop new events that would drive visitation to your regions.
So that's a watch this space.
It's a watch this space.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Back to Rob, you got one?
Yeah, just one very quick question. Thanks. That follows on from Maxine's question. Some advice on how we might, as a city council, enable hotel development in the city. I know we've got one going in Wood Street. We've recently been advised that another one, which was on the cards around the hotel, around the theatre, is not going to go ahead, and I presume that that's on the basis of viability. Any suggestions on what we could do as a council to enable the developer and or the hotel groups to come to the city? I mean, it must be the best time with low interest rates. Although not the best time in terms of what's happened in the last 6 months. And we've got lots of buildings around the city which could be renovated into a hotel. What is there anything you've got in your mind that we could do to try and incentivise that kind of development that would give us those hotel rooms that we're desperately short of?
So look, I think that the council has the best tools available at your disposal about how you wish to invest or attract hotel development. Obviously, you've done it by providing land and identifying land opportunities. You're a significant landholder for the city. But if you look to your past as well, the Riverview Hotel Limited, which was a co-investment with Tainui Group Holdings to develop the Novotel and Ibis today. You have had a previous track record of co-investment, and then obviously you've sold down and now removed yourself from that development, and it's now 100% owned by Tainui Group. But again, I think you have had a history of being able to do this sort of work. It's whether your council is prepared to do that again.
Thanks, Jason. I'll move the received report, seconded by Councillor Ewan. Is there any debate? Yeah. Jeff.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, Jason, I just want to firstly just echo what Councillor Gallagher has said. Thank you for the work you do and your upbeat approach. Great to hear. And I guess I just wanted to, following Councillor Pascoe's question, just emphasise that we certainly can play a role in hotel development, and I'm keen for us to play a role in that. And there is one possibility is we have an item coming out later in the agenda about the endowment fund, and that is one of the tools possibly at our disposal in the future. And as Jason says, we do have land, that land behind Arts Post. In the past, we have looked at that. So as part of our central city planning, I'm certainly, I think a lot of us are looking at the possibilities there. And as you know, there's a stretch along the riverfront where we're really keen to activate things as well. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to reassure you that that's top of most of our minds there. Thanks again,
Great,
Jason.
thank you.
I'll just close out and say, yeah, totally agree with you, Mayor, and I think, agree with the sentiment, the leadership you're providing during these times, Jason, and yeah, also welcome your students to have those discussions. Thank you. All right, I'm just wondering, we've got to Waka at 11:30, and that's going to be a 45-minute session. So I'm wondering if you, with your leave, Vanessa and Michael, we just have a quick 5-minute break, and we can come back and take your item to Waka back to back, and it'll take us into lunch. So quick toilet break.
So have we voted on that?
What's it?
That we received the report, have we voted?
Sorry.
Yeah, I always want this management.
Those in favour? Any against? We'll see you back in 7 minutes. Ready? Sorry.
Martin, you've always wanted to sit in the management row, haven't you? In the kitchen.
The general manager is just wanting to remind us of the hand sanitizer to your left. Mike, and to your right, Rob, and our microphone use policy.
Oh, yeah, just quickly handing around the microphone rather than speaking into you, was just.
Good idea.
Yeah. Thank you. It was. It wasn't late. No, I see the yellow line around.
All right, welcome Vanessa and Mike. The floor is yours. And for everyone else, we are on item 9, page 54.
All right, just saying the presentation coming up. Not that one. So just establishing that one.
Do we have the presentation on Roger?
On diligent, it is attachment 6.
Okay.
Have I got the presentation?
Do you want to have a look at mine? Go through it, or?
We can take it as being read. I wonder, Mr. Chair, since we've all got it.
Do we move on?
Just if you say which page you're on.
Oh, did they get this?
Yeah, they've received it.
Okay. Right, so just looking obviously at page 97. Good morning, everybody. So just to do a quick highlight tour, I guess, because you've all had the reports already. So we have a focus on our 5 CBD brands, which are business, people, promotion, awards, and events.
Could you speak into the
Thank you. Oh, can you hear?
I think the mic's coming.
Keep talking.
Okay, so starting with the CBD promotion, just to highlight the fact that we have 42,000 followers through our social media channels. And this has been invaluable, particularly during lockdown and the alert levels, being able to communicate with the public about the business community. We've got, we're up to 3 editions of Hamilton Neat Places, and we're currently in development of the 4th edition now. And with Hamilton Waikato Tourism, we're also working continuously on the Ambassador Program, which is a great promotional tool to build the profile of the business community in the CBD. So just to, sorry, I'm just seeing things up on the screen up there. So the 3 neat places, just to highlight the 3 that we have at the moment, you'll note that all the covers are places that are along the riverfront, and we will continue that theme with our neat places for the next one. And just a promotional slide on the Ambassador Program there as well. So I know some of you have done the Ambassador Program, and we're hoping to get more and more businesses going through this, but there has been good attendance so far, which is great. During lockdown, we were fortunate in being able to move very quickly to create a virtual CBD, which allowed us to communicate again to the public about what businesses were operating during lockdown and at each alert level. So this is going to be a foundation for creating the digital CBD of places to go and businesses to visit going forward with our digital CBD. And it's still in use at the moment. And we also ran a series of promotions throughout lockdown just to keep the businesses front of mind. So we ran various voucher promotions that people could redeem after lockdown. And again, very well received. We had great engagement, and it was an opportunity for people to be able to tell us which businesses they were wanting to visit and continue to do shout outs to the businesses, which was fantastic. We joined with Hamilton Waikato Tourism and on a campaign around supporting local businesses, and I'm sure Jason talked about it as well. But we went very much along the theme of eat local, support local, shop local and explore local to highlight all those businesses again to the local community to come out, spend, shop, experience and enjoy what Hamilton has to offer. So that was a range of billboards that we had featured around Hamilton, and we also did some print campaign and some radio campaign as well, just to encourage people to spend their money post-lockdown. So looking at some of our CBD people, we were very fortunate during lockdown and throughout the alert levels to have a significant amount of stories in the media. We had some really good business profile and, sorry?
We'll just grab your hand-free mic because the other one's working and it's just creating a bit of feedback. Can we turn that one off perhaps?
Am I back on that one?
Yep. That's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as I was saying, we did enjoy some good media coverage. The local print media were really, really good in profiling the CBD, the business community, and just what was happening throughout lockdown and various alert levels. So I think it's just worth showing a range of articles that we were able to secure during that time. And difficult to talk about lockdown without mentioning the words pivot and highlighting some of our businesses that were able to do. Feedback then.
It's caused a malfunction when you use that word.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it is one of the world's most overused words now, but would feel remiss if I didn't use it with everybody else using it. So two businesses in particular we were able to have highlighted was The Escapist, one of our escape rooms, who were able to take their offering online and actually attracted an international audience. And Journey's Gym, which is opened up a couple of weeks before lockdown, but they were able to not only take their workouts online, but to develop them even further to include a nutritional program, and they made such a great business with their online presence over lockdown that they've actually kept that going after they've come back and opened up their physical premises again, which has been fantastic. So just to focus on the CBD business brand, we were delighted that the development community were up and underway very soon after level 3. And just to highlight some of the key ones, or key larger developments there, obviously Waikato Regional Council building was straight back into it. We've also had the turning of the sod for Union Square, and that's receiving some great profile at the moment as well. And many of you may have seen down on Victoria Street, the old, what we know as the old Mackenzie building, that demolition happened very soon after the CBD opened back again for business, for 3 new apartments to be built there and a retail hospitality frontage. And it was great to get that underway so quickly after lockdown and for people to be able to see things happening again. Some of the other sort of key things to happen straight after lockdown that were exciting was the development of 2 hospitality business that had expanded, and hospitality being a key industry that got that certainly felt felt the challenge of lockdown and the alert levels, that it was fantastic to see 2 businesses that were able to continue with their development plans. That being the Chili House, who have expanded to a much larger premises across the road, as well as kept their original premises, and Burger Bros, who have gone from being a hole-in-the-wall takeaway operation to now being a sit-down hospitality venue. And we also have Niche Skin Spa, who are also developing or going into a much larger premises, and pretty tough sectors, so it was great to see those development continue. And Casabella Lane, we've got 2 other businesses highlighted there, Hayley Adele Photography and Soul Images, an art studio. Both of those have gone in Casabella Lane, which Casabella Lane has gone through a bit of an identity change, but it's great to see that it is continuing to progress and fill up with a range of businesses, and that's received some wonderful profile recently too. And CBD Awards. So we have just launched our awards very recently. So we will be progressing with our awards. So there's a couple of images provided to you of last year's awards, and we will shortly be releasing where this year's awards will be. It's another fairly unique venue that doesn't have power or water, which I'm sure we can locate in time. However, again, it will be showcasing the CBD community and celebrating the businesses within it, which I think is going to be much needed this year. So that is planned for the middle of November. And CBD events, I know you've received a report on that. So again, just to highlight, obviously we've had a disrupted year with the event plan, but we were able to enjoy some amazing events early on in the year. Things like having a pump track brought into Garden Place, and to see that taken down to Norris Ward Park and being enjoyed by a lot of people was great. We've had some of our regular things come back, like Children's Day and Boon Festival, which are always huge events, bringing in the crowds during summer. And we had new events opening, like Mesoverse, which you can see the light display there, and meditation. So we were able to have a reasonable event program happen up until the middle of March. And very fortunate to also welcome the Hamilton Garden Arts Festival into the CBD this year. So that was brilliant and well enjoyed by people during their lunch hour, to see some of the acts that were happening down at the gardens coming into the CBD and providing a teaser of what was to come. And so last slide there is just our action plan for 2020, 2021. So obviously we're into the new financial year, and it's definitely now more than ever that we feel we are needed to get behind the business community and really be promoting what the CBD has to offer, why people should come in and visit it, whether they're locals, visitors to the region, domestic tourism that Jason was talking about. We really want to be highlighting the CBD as a place to come. So, a lot of our action plan that we have is focused around that highlight. So very much a whistle-stop presentation there, but if you have any questions based on the presentation or on the earlier provided reports, happy to take them.
Thanks. I've got Jeff.
How central city businesses are coping and how you feel they are going to cope in the coming months?
We're very much expecting some challenges ahead. Certainly post-lockdown, there was a good feel around the CBD, there was a good feel around the business community. We did enjoy very much a honeymoon period of spending locally, and we were aware that there would be some challenges and fallouts, expecting them toward the end of the year. Having gone recently into lockdown, recently into level 2 in Auckland, into level 3, we have noticed there has been a bit of a change. There was actually a a good feel overall. The last couple of weeks there has been definitely has been a change, and yeah, businesses have really felt that, particularly those in the high customer facing side. So your hospitality, retail, health and wellness. You know, there has been more of an impact there over the last few weeks. Prior to that, it was looking quite good.
I might just make a couple of comments, if that's right.
Yes, please do.
Cool. Office is actually still going quite well. Pretty much